Hi there, folks. This is episode 215 of the WP-Tonic show. It's our round table special every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can join us as well if you want to on our Facebook page, or you can log in to our Zoom platform and be part of the conversation as well. I'm going to let our great panel introduce themselves, and I'm going to start off with ladies, and let's start off with Kim first. Like to introduce yourself, Kim?
Yes, please. I'm Kim Shivler. I'm a WordPress trainer, communications consultant, and I focus on online courses, membership sites, and building your brand through communication.
That's great. Sally, like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Sally Getch. My business is WP Fangirl because I am. And I build websites for growing businesses and for nonprofits. And I'm also the organizer of the East Bay WordPress Meetup.
That's great. I'm going to let our special guest introduce himself. Introduce yourself, Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Marlowe. I'm a WordPress consultant and longtime web and graphic designer. I'm also a digital marketing pro. Wear a lot of hats, and I'm just happy to be on the show.
Have you brought your hats with you?
They're actually in the other
John
room.
Is wearing the hat
I've only got
instead.
one hat on, so and I'm also a co-host on the LuchBreak Marketing Podcast, and we talk about marketing design.
Yeah, but I really love it. Be listening to some of the episodes. Great stuff. John, like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. My name is John Locke. My business is Lockdown Design, providing SEO and custom WordPress theme development for mid-sized businesses.
All right. And I'm Jonathan Denwood. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're your trusted WordPress partner when it comes to service, security, and keeping your site up. So, folks, we've got some great stories this week. When it comes to the stories, things definitely been moving. And I think we'll start off with a tavern story from WP Tavern. Adobe discontinues Flash support and updates in 2020. Da 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 da. What do you think of this one, Sally?
It's about time. It's, I skipped Flash. Flash was the thing to do on the web basically during the period that I was retired. So I really was grateful to have missed that entirely, because it just seems like such a, it was so bad in terms of what the web is really supposed to be. And it was so overused for annoying things.
Well, funny enough, my first paying gig was to make a Flash intro. I got into it with my Flash, actually.
People did. And, sometimes it was used well, but a lot of times it was just irritating. Oh, we have to watch this long intro before we can actually get to your website and do what we were going there to do. Mm-hmm.
It was actually a quite good gig. So it was for the London Underground, for one of their sub-site. They wanted the intro, and it was I won't go into it. Basically, what did you think, Kim?
I was the same. It's about time. There are some gaming communities out there still that need to start rethinking themselves, because they're, I think, the last holdout that I see. I, unlike Sally, was not able to avoid Flash. I was back in a developer during that time and had to actually work with some of the original Adobe on intranet training things that were all Flash-based. And it really was not fun or pretty. So I'm happy it's going that way. And I'm hoping a few of the gaming communities that I play in will keep up to date.
Well, I started when it was still Macromedia. It wasn't even Adobe.
Me too.
What did you think, Jason?
So when I started out, I guess it was in my internships, it was reinforced to me that I really needed to know Flash. I was very resistant because I was like, that's not really something that I'm kind of like into. I really liked kind of like the coding aspect of it. And so Flash wasn't something I really loved, but it's something that I've run into a lot over the years to try and educate people like, no, you don't need that on your site. No, you don't want that on your site. And I guess with the prevalence of iPhones, which, don't support it, right? So you can't even see a site when you're loading up your phone. And I think that was really probably the biggest death knell for them. Mm-hmm. And then moving forward, I'm just ecstatic because it's hopefully something in a few years we're not even going to have to think about anymore. I know that, what was it? Gosh, it was last week. I got sent this training video from HR, and they said, you need to watch this video, you need to follow through these steps, and you need to complete it by the end of the day. I said, okay. I pulled it up, and my Flash player was out of date. I had to restart my computer. I had to move from Firefox to Chrome to Firefox, and I was like, I'm so sick of this. When is it going to be gone? And I feel like I read the story like the next day, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Thank God. What about you, John? What about you, John?
John has disappeared.
John's disappeared.
John, he's having some technical trouble, so we go on to the next story.
Can I just throw out one thing, Jonathan? For people who are interested at all in the backstory of the Flash decision, what happened with Apple, et cetera, because I agree, I think that was a big part of the death knell. The book Play Bigger, which is just a fabulous business book anyway, they do a detailed markdown because one of those guys was with one of the companies. So it's a great story if you want to dig in a little more.
Yep, I would agree. Thanks. Hopefully John will join. On to the next story quickly. Envato. I always pronounce it incorrectly. Has too much cash, so staff will share its riches. Well, they seem to be making a bit of money. What do you think, Jason?
As somebody who's used a lot of templates over the years, I love Envato. Did I say that right? Envato? Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. You did better than me. Can you host the show actually?
Yeah. I'll be on next week. So as somebody who's used them a lot, I have a lot of respect for how they stepped in. They might be a giant in the space right now, but I have a lot of respect for how they stepped in and really put a lot of structure to WordPress largely because they offer so many different themes, but their support community that runs through there. I love the product. I don't really use any kind of custom themes, any of those themes anymore. I do everything kind of custom or page builder stuff, but I love it. And to say that you've got a cache overflow problem, I would love to have that problem. And the fact that they've given it to their employees, huge respect for that. I love it. Love reading that story.
Yeah. What did you think about it, Kim, on a business kind of outlook? Were you surprised how much money they're making?
I was. And how many times have we heard people talk about these markets being dead? And obviously not for them. And I agree with Jason. I completely respected, what they were making, how they decided to bring the employees in and share it. I am one of those people who has a real love-hate relationship with some of their themes because I think some of them are really, really bad. But I love the business side of how they handled it. And obviously they're doing something right if they're making that much.
Right.
Yeah, let's hope they're paying their taxes. That's what I've got to say. Sally, what did you think?
I think that after that public announcement about the money, that if they haven't been paying their taxes, they'll be hearing from the tax office. But I think they made a great decision. And some of ThemeForest's most popular themes are simply dire, and I wish they didn't exist. But as a company, it seems like they're doing things right. It's great that they're making a profit. I think it's great that they're bootstrapped. They're wondering about going public, and I can understand why they would hesitate because they've had the control over their own business that you get when you don't have venture capital funding, and also once people start investing and once you go public, there's such a pressure to push up your profits at the expense of anything else. I can see why they'd hesitate, and clearly they're willing to take the time to really think about their next step.
I think also the only thing I would say, see what your reaction quickly, panel, is I think Automatic must be watching this a little bit. You know, we've had this thing about Jetpack and having a selection of themes in Jetpack and that. Do you think Automatic are looking at these results and thinking, oh, maybe this is something we should go in, have a re-look at it? What do you think, Kim?
I don't know. It's a question. And, you know, it's been one of those things that's been thrown out a lot by different developers, particularly theme developers, of is the more automatic ads these, are they going into even are those people who focus on vertical markets where they just do themes for restaurants, et cetera? Is that where Automatic's coming next? So I think there's a definite possibility.
What do you think, Jason?
To be honest, yeah, while I love Envato, I'm really sick of themes, pre-built themes. I can't tell you how much I hate it. And I think we might talk on this later, but Beaver Builder is like my go-to. I have a couple different core themes that really have nothing built into it other than the fact that it gives a nice menu and it looks nice on mobile, the menu, because that's really all I care about. And just being able to have a page builder is what it's at for me. So I would say that I'm indifferent. Yeah. I just really, you know, I really don't like them.
Yeah, I got kind of medium road. I still think theme, you know, if you're a marketer with a good design eye or a designer that's in marketing, fine. But a lot of people just haven't got, and I'm not, you know, I'm trying to find the right words because I don't want to belittle anybody, but I've been in front of people where they've shown me stuff and it's just, they think it looks fantastic and it's a dog's breath, to say the least. And and they're going to throw it up and, you know, kind of on.
That was the key word, throw it up.
Throw it up online and destroy the reputation of their company. So, got to be a bit careful. I'm going to go on to the next story, all right? Because I think I was waffling. Let's go on to somebody on the panel wrote this one up, and it's really juicy. It just kind of made my day, actually, when I read this one. Motato domain expires, lessons learned. Right. Like Jason, you're the writer of this. Can you give us a bit of a background, a quick introduction of what all this was about?
Right. So before the background, real quick, and I explained this a little bit before the show started, but this was actually a test. I'm heavily into marketing and lead generation and, you know, traffic and understanding the flows and all that stuff, which unfortunately that's where marketing is just treating people as leads. But the thought was, how can I find something that's happening right now and then write about it quickly and then leverage that to gain content? And so I just happened to, it was kind of a thought that I had in the back of my head for a while. And I got a text from a friend of mine and he said, dude, look at Marketo's website. And logged on and I was like, oh my word, we got to talk about this now. And then I got on Twitter, started realizing that, long story short, Marketo did not renew their domain and it expired. It expired. And then you just had this mayhem that ensued where people were trying to get on, access. They released a statement that said that emails were not affected, but I was reading a lot of stuff on Twitter where people were saying that scheduled content still sent, but the landing pages were broken. So they did have a lot of issues. And the fact of the matter is, it was a really bad day for Marketo, but it was also a really bad day for Marketo users, right? So the whole core of the article talks about, yeah, they screwed up big time. It was bad. It was really bad. But it's about the response that they had to it, because that really shows what a company is about, right? It's not this collection of everything that you've done wrong. It's really how you respond to what you do wrong, those mistakes. And they did things well. I mean, they were rushing around to renew the domain, and they actually had a brand, what I call a brand ambassador, step in, and he paid for it. He was like, "Hey, hope that helps." He stepped in and took care of it, and then they responded well on social media. They had really good outreach, and they handled situations well. And, I think at the end of the day, I think they're ready to move on. But, they handled the situation well as best they could.
I just love we've got all these different names for different people now, isn't it? Like growth hackers and you got all these different titles, haven't they, that have emerged. When you go to a startup or online website and you read the titles of all the people, it's just amazing how much effort's gone into their titling all these different people, and it's all a load of crap, isn't it?
Yeah, well, most of them are quite meaningless, and I'm not sure that other people are going to treat them as grown-ups if they don't use don't use job titles that you can understand. But I was having been, forced to work with some of Marketo's stuff and finding it just like styling their forms is a horrendous task.
Right.
I could not help feeling a certain degree of schadenfreude to hear this, but I was.
What was that word? What was that word?
The word is schadenfreude, and it means, taking delight in the suffering of others.
I love that word. I love that word.
This is Jason's word of the day. We could start that as a series. Yes. And it did surprise me that they haven't, they didn't have their theme on auto renew. I mean, I tried not to put anything on auto renew because I have cash flow issues, being a small business.
Not when you're been valued at what, as over $1 billion for this company, right?
A company like Marketo can freaking well afford to have their domain on auto renew.
You just
even
can't.
If they have it in 20 versions, know. So it just is, it was fairly shocking that happened to them. But I think they have done a good job with the crisis communication, and I know a lot of people who are in PR and business communications, and this is pretty much what they say. Okay, something happens, you need to respond right away. Mm-hmm. You need to take responsibility for whatever you messed up, and you need to tell people, here's what we're doing about it. Mm-hmm. And if you respond, quickly and sincerely, people will respect you and forgive you. And, there are people who were inconvenienced, and, depending on how serious that was for them, I don't know what the company will do, but, they got it back up and running. They didn't just pretend nothing was wrong, or that they didn't need to say anything or do any of those things that would make it worse for them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just awful. You just can't get that GoDaddy on auto renewal for 5 years, can you? It's just terrible. What do you think? I think the other factor, am I not have they not been trying to sell themselves for a while? Have they not been on the market?
Marketo?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, they were positioned as the #1 marketing software back in like 2012, 2013. So I would think positioning themselves to be bought is as kind of like every tech company's desire, right? So it's, how do I build and build and build this company to be purchased? But that's fact. I actually don't know that. But
I always found this, the little bit of work I've had to do with it, to be honest, I found it a little bit clunky, especially compared to HubSpot stuff, which I'm not totally keen on either. But I actually thought HubSpot's actual interface UX design was more smoother. But that was just my opinion. Got any kind of end remarks about this story, Kim? No? Are you silent, Kim? You're on mute, Kim, I think.
Yeah, I am. Mainly just that everyone should go read Jason's article, because you broke it down really, really well. If anybody's interested in more, that covers it.
I will say, now that I had a chance to think about it, in response to your question, about, are they positioning themselves to be sold? I think that, Marketo's in a unique position where they work with like their Marketo champions, and they're like connected people to help make their product better, to kind of, increase or I don't know, streamline processes and stuff like that. I know there's a company out of Canada, one of probably many, but they're called KNAK, And their position is to step in and make functional templates for stuff like Marketo and Eloqua and things like that for emails and landing pages. Where Marketo falls short, they step up and actually make really cool features to help. So I think they've positioned themselves probably in this space and probably not put a lot of effort into making those things better, because they work with all these other companies who adopt their product and spend all that money working on it to make them better. So I think they've put themselves in that position probably on purpose.
Yeah, well, it's always a kind of give and take argument. You know, you got companies of a certain size that wanted us to go to one vendor and get most of their marketing technology from one vendor. So you end up with a kind of Swiss Army knife of a vendor, or the other alternative is that you go to the best of each particular sector and get their product, but then you have a jumble of different technologies and company services, which has a higher service level requirement and training, because you've got to learn all these different interfaces and how they work together. So it's always a back and forth, really, you know, about do we use something that has a unified interface but might not be on the top of the leading edge of technology, right, or do we use these separate companies? And there's never a yes or right about that, because it goes back and forth like a yo-yo. On to the next one that brought another smile to my face. GoDaddy launches WordPress premium support to provide small business with 24/7 expertise. And what got me chuckled was that they published it on a ASSPX website page. That really put a joke. So what did you think of that, Sally?
I think there's a certain amusement in that fact, but I've read articles about WordPress that were published on Joomla, and you notice the irony, but I presume that this is where they publish all of their press releases. And, there are some reasons to build things in ASP.X. There really are.
Are there? Are you sure?
I don't know.
Yeah, like compiled stuff, speed. But it's, it's expensive, and it's not what a lot of people need or should be paying for. They probably have some reasons for not switching everything over. I think it's a good thing. I mean, I just recently had some contact with GoDaddy support because I have some clients who are there. I'm
really sorry.
Trying to persuade them all to move, mind you. But because, GoDaddy has come so far as a company. I was just reading an article about how, they've become a terrific place, for women to work and increase their diversity. And they've done all this outreach into the community. And, they have people like, Mendel working for them. They've done some really good. Their hosting is still terrible. And until that gets fixed, right, I can't recommend for people to stay there. But, when I contact support, they do usually manage to figure things out eventually. And, GoDaddy would not be as successful as they are if they weren't really good at this upselling thing. So, premium support clearly means you're going to pay extra for it. But people, there are people who will find that worth it. So I think and we know they bought WP Curve a while ago. So figured something like this must be in the works. It makes sense for them to do. I still want them to see them actually improve their hosting product.
Okay. What did you think, Jason?
Very, similar thoughts as far as, I'm pretty down on their hosting. And I've never had a good experience with their support. And I'm also in the same space where I am trying to get customers to move. I actually am on almost completely now on WP Engine. Shout out to WP Engine and all the amazing things that they do. I don't know, are any of you guys on WP Engine?
I have some clients there. It's
Gotcha.
I don't have a single. There isn't a single host that fits everybody. So right. I try to recommend what's going to be appropriate.
Right. So for me, I've been maybe 16, 17 years that I've been designing and building websites. But for me, WP Engine, hands down, they have it going on. Support, oh my God, I could just talk all day about how much I love their support. But it's for GoDaddy, they have a learning curve, a massive learning curve with WordPress. And up until now, even with their WordPress managed hosting, which I think, didn't they release like last year or something like that?
Longer ago than that. It was a couple of years.
Yeah. So even that is crap. I'm sorry. But they definitely have a lot of things that they can learn in the space as far as WordPress specifically. Downtime, I think, is a huge issue that I've experienced personally with some of my customers, and trying to get them off of GoDaddy, because downtime in WordPress with GoDaddy has been a massive issue. In fact, I'm actually working with WP Engine right now on a case study I did for downtime. I had one customer that I tested across multiple across a month, and she had 3.5 hours, I think, of total downtime on her site. And it was always at the worst time of day. I mean, it would be like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, and then sometimes it would be half an hour. Sometimes it would be longer. So it was consistently GoDaddy that was the source of the downtime. So I think they have a lot of issues in WordPress space. So, I mean, I wish them the best of luck. I know that they're have a small partnership with WP Elevation, which is a great community of folks. And, I hope that they do well. I don't wish bad on anybody, but they have a long way to go. A long way to go.
There we go. What did you think, Kim?
Same thing, agreed. Not surprising from their purchase, but they really do have a long way to go. My clients who I moved off, in fact, I got to a point when I was still doing sites where I refused to work with people if they stayed on the host. Because a lot of it for me wasn't even just downtime, it was performance issues. I mean, the performance was horrible, and I'd have to charge them like 5 times more than I would normally be charging them while I was updating the site, because I was sitting there waiting and watching and waiting. And
yes, last week you missed me telling Mendel that they're using the WordPress admin on GoDaddy made me want to shoot myself. Yeah. He was a bit hurt, which, it's obviously it's not Mendel's fault, but that is how I feel.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I think the reality is, I was thinking about all the conversations, because I've had, over the past couple of years, I've had a go at GoDaddy, but funny enough, it was for different reasons, which I won't go in because it's done and over with. But when it comes to this, I think what we forget is the dominance of them and e.g. Bluehost and their subsidiary hosting platform providers, how much market share they have. And I think it's a consequence of also a price structure in the hosting industry that fundamentally, when you look at the business reality, the mechanics, doesn't really work. But unfortunately, we've got into a situation where it's in the psyche of the general population that they're going to get effective hosting for $3 to $4 a month, and the reality is you can't get that. Can only work with a website that's really getting hardly any traffic at all. And the support standards and everything else that you expect, you can't really get on that price point, but it's in the psyche of the consumer that they can get that. And the responsibility of how that situation has happened, you could argue back and forth about the responsibility, but it's a fact, isn't it? What do you think, Sam?
And hosting companies, would promise unlimited everything. Unlimited doesn't actually exist. So they say, oh, you get, unlimited bandwidth and unlimited this and unlimited that. And then suddenly, your site gets /dotted or whatever they call it these days, and 100,000 visitors arrive at once, and it takes the whole server down, and they turn your site off. And, you've got a big issue. And I think if they'd been more honest about, okay, we can provide, low budget hosting for small sites without a lot of traffic, and this is what you get for that, then they wouldn't be in that position where they're overselling server space in order to keep their own costs down, and setting people up for problems like that.
Yep, I think we covered it. Let's go on to the last story, and then we'll get on and have our break. Where is it? Where is that story? It's from WP Shout. It was about, let's get the title, Beaver Builder, a WordPress developer's perspective. Nice article, actually. What did you think of this one, Jason?
Loved it. I actually, 3 months ago, switched, and I am exclusively building with Beaver Builder as my page builder. Again, I do everything as like a test, like is A or B more efficient? And I tried Elementor versus Beaver Builder. Had a ton of issues with Elementor. I said, forget it, screw it, go away. Moved to Beaver Builder, and I haven't looked back. It is increased my production speed so much. Like I can build a site so much faster when you combine Beaver Builder with a really good understanding of CSS. Gosh, you have relatively unlimited possibilities because you're building on WordPress for one, and then you combine a really great page builder with some skills with CSS. Gosh, you could build any site. It's crazy.
They're great, and they've been on the. We've interviewed them. They're a great team. Highly respect them, and I just think it's a great product. And they're great members of the WordPress community, and they haven't given me a check to say that. There's no sponsor. They have sponsored the show a couple of episodes, but not today. What did you think, Kim? I'm
also Beaver Builder fangirl. Love them. I pretty much use them all the time. I teach them. My personal latest site is there. And I actually use both their theme and the builder. And now I'm just learning their new Beaver themer, which I'm kind of excited about what that's going to give me. And I loved the article. I mean, that was a beautiful deep dive into it. He did a really good job.
Yeah.
What did you think, Sally?
They write very thorough articles at WP Shout. And I liked the disclaimer at the beginning. There are no affiliate links. We've not been paid for any of it. And I think, these days you actually really need to say that, because so many people who are writing reviews, the reviews are paid for, and it may not be like really immediately, obviously clear. I've had people offer me money to write some reviews, and I'm like, you're joking, right? If I write a review, I can't let it be influenced by anything. Right. I do think it's a good product. And, that what he talked about is that, well, we weren't even going to test anything that, hadn't been on sort of the list of plugins that, Pippin Williamson said, these are good in terms of their code and structure and not interfering with other plugins that you might have installed. And then, kind of went over, well, here's what it's like and what you can do. And we had a meetup about Beaver Builder recently, and I had not actually used it since pretty much it first came out. So, and I found myself with it, a small site I was redoing for a colleague, and she had bought one of those horrible kitchen sink themes from ThemeForest, and it came with Visual Decomposer, and it was so horrendously awful. And, part of her issue was the site was really slow. Plus it looked absolutely craptastic because, she's a brilliant woman, but not a designer. And so I decided, okay, well, let me, pick a simple theme. We're going to see how far we can get with just the free version of Beaver Builder, which actually is very far because you can put widgets in it. So, instead of, I build on Genesis, and, the widgetized homepage idea that they came up with was sort of a kludgy workaround for our not having a good way to structure it. And it's really confusing to clients. And so one of the nice things is that instead of somebody having to go like drag widgets around in the widget area instead of editing their homepage on the homepage, which is the logical thing, you put the builder in there, and then you create different sections, and you put widgets in some of the sections, and it's all there in one place, and you get a good sense of what it's, what it's actually supposed to be doing for you. And it's Visual Composer is so horrendous to work with, even apart from the mess of shortcodes and all the other problems that it has. And so I was very pleased with it, and I probably will use it in more places where, I want to be able to quickly put up a certain layout. I think it's not, you need to know enough that you have more than one tool, and that, sometimes it is going to be better to code a template or to use a different solution. But in other cases, this is a great option. And all the silly, there are those people out there who are like, oh, well, you're not a real developer or you're not, all of that is just so stupid and childish. What you need to do is what works best for you and for your clients. And if there aren't, horrible complications to your code and your site performance and other kinds of consequences that have come with some of the page builders, then there's no reason to avoid it. You make your life easier. If you're still providing the same value to your client, you can still charge them the same amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't care the reality is they don't care if you're using WordPress, Joomla, whatever. They just want a site that works.
Right. They want an outcome. And I think people forget that, they're not paying you specifically for writing code or having coding skills. They're paying you to give them a website that's going to help them meet their business goals.
I learned really quickly not to talk WordPress talk to general clients. They're not interested in post types, taxonomies. If you even mention that talk, they just glaze over and they think less of you. So I keep well clear of it. Well, we're going to finish off now. I'm going to go to our break. And when we're coming back, we're going to have a quick chat of tools at understanding your site visitors. I think we've had a great news section with some great stories, and we'll be back in a minute, folks. See you soon. We're coming back. It's been a great show. I really enjoyed it. We're on to the main topic, tools for understanding your site visitors. And it's a broad subject, folks. From heat maps to Google Analytics to Clicky so I'm going to hit it off with Jason first. How would you start off this conversation, Jason? Do you think we should start off with the analytical tools or a more general strategy about understanding your site visitors?
If you ask me, I love tools. Probably to my detriment, people tell me to stop talking about tools. So, in quick shout out, we just did a podcast recently about this and wrote a blog on 500 or more tools to help you become a better marketer and designer.
Oh, I have to go. I can steal the link.
Only 500. Like nobody's going to look at that and say, "Oh my God!" and run screaming.
Well, it was, do you guys?
It was a little bit excessive, wasn't it, Jason?
Yeah, it was.
I admire your thoroughness, but
yeah,
that's an intimidating quantity of things to think of tackling. Even though by the time you get established in anything, you've learned a whole lot of things. You just don't usually do them at once.
Well, it breaks down into category, and then there are options within each. So like there's, instead of choosing one, you have like 10 options. So that whole thing. Do you guys know Brian Dean? He's like my guru of SEO. He's got this method called skyscraper method, and so he says, take a look at what's out there in the space, find the best one that you can find, and then add 10 stories to it. And I found an article by The Next Web, and they had 300. And I was like, 500, that's mine. So that was, again, I used my blog, like I said earlier, all for testing. But for the sake of this, let's talk about tools. I'm all about tools. And if you're using Omniture, stop using Omniture and go to the person who told you to use Omniture and knock them in the head. That's my point of view. I've used it so much in the past.
Tell us how you really feel.
I hate it. I hate it so much. But Google Analytics it's an amazing platform that every time I use it, I am constantly amazed by the fact that it's free. I'm like, I can't believe that I can get so much insight easily for nothing. And I mean, that's the first, after we build the site, actually even before we build sites for customers, that's the first thing. That's part of our shot list.
I just want to ask you a quick sub question about Google Analytics, because you know, there's some great in WordPress. There's some great third-party plugins that give you a widget area or area in the main dashboard that can show you. How have you got a quick tip or a quick insight about how you use Google Analytics to get some useful data that goes above the normal, just showing you how many visitors hit the site? Or is that linked more to a more detailed strategy? So you can't really do it because it's really
it goes deeper. You know, any of those great tools that allow you to see the analytics there in your WordPress dashboard, I feel like they all are they're lacking. I almost just leave them there just for customers to see, oh, okay, I can see what I'm doing. But any kind of in-depth analysis where I'm looking at, you know, maybe trying to see if a customer has just an online business or if they have a brick and mortar. We'll say, okay, they're brick and mortar. How can we get them more traffic in a specific area? Let's look and see what cities they're getting traffic from. Maybe they can market to them and get some drive markets. And so there's, let's do another podcast. Let's do 5 podcasts about Google Analytics.
Well, you have to come back.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. But no, there's so many insights to gain. Every day I feel like I'm turning a new tool. I'm like, oh, wait, if I compare this piece of data to this piece of data, I can get a whole new insight. So, you know, Google Analytics is definitely for the money because it's free. It is the best insight tool, I think, for understanding website traffic and visitors and behaviors. So,
I also use Clicky a bit. What do you think about Clicky?
I don't use it at all.
No, I found the basic free plan. It just gives you a quick insight. The interface is a bit clunky compared to something like Google Analytics. But the raw data that it provides is quite interesting, and it gives you more insight about who is visiting, where they're coming from, a bit more detailed. What about you, Kim? Any kind of tools that you use to give some insight about who's coming to the site and who they are, where they're coming from, blah, blah, blah?
I'm the worst person about doing that. I know I should do more of it. However, I do use Google Analytics, and then I use some of Sumo's free tools.
Yeah, right.
Because they have some kind of heat map tools, and I like them. What interested me, though, when you pulled this, you know, when you put in that this was our topic, Jonathan, so I thought, oh, I better look at it a little bit because I just really don't use any of those tools. I get most of my information from my site, actually, from people who sign up through the emails and my outreach, or who sign up for one of my classes and then my follow-up outreach. But did you see that LinkedIn is going this week announced that they now have a website? I put it in the, they're going to have a website demographics from LinkedIn on who's going to you, where they're coming from the LinkedIn space. So that interested me. They just posted that on the 26th.
Wow. Well, it's logical, really, because really the amount of data they've got, and I think that's the reason why Microsoft, you know, bought them, is the amount of data they have. And they haven't really seemed to have done anything with it. But I think they've got some plans, by what you've just, which was news to me. Obviously, they've got some plans to change that situation. What do you think, Sally? Because that's interesting that that they're going down that road, isn't it?
Yes. There are a few things I think. Like Kim, I'm not a super expert at tools. I think the first thing is to say, well, what is it you want to understand about your site visitors? And there are probably going to be a number of different things. I mean, you know, even the basic information that Google Analytics gives you when you're not very familiar with how to set it up, to show you, oh, these are the pages that are the most popular, or this is the behavior flow of where people go when they land on this page. Where are they going next?
Mm-hmm.
What are they? I mean, if somebody asked me once to do an analysis of why they're they'd put an ad out in a fairly targeted print publication, and why they didn't see any sales from that. Well, what I discovered was that the link in the coupon basically pointed to the homepage, and the homepage did not have like a big buy my product here place. So people were never getting to the purchase page. Looking at the flow, people didn't go from the homepage to the purchase page. It wasn't obvious how to get there. And, you don't have to be an expert at Google Analytics to see that. But I think we pay for Google. I think we pay for Google in terms of the amount of information we give them. Yeah. And that's a trade-off that in the main, we are willing to make, those of us who are aware of making it. But, they do have a great product. One thing that has come up for me, because I work with a number of podcasters, is, podcast download statistics. And, what happens is no two sources of these ever give you the same information. So it can be difficult to know. And there was a recent announcement from Apple that, people who have things published on iTunes are going to start to get some statistics about them. And that will be interesting to see, because you can find out some things if you look at, some people have their feeds run through FeedBurner, for instance, and that will show you some things, or have statistics from Blueberry, the company that makes the PowerPress plugin. You can set up statistics with them, and to help to see, like, how are most people getting to this episode? Where are most people listening? On iTunes, on something else? Are a lot of people just going to the website and pressing the play button? And a little more breakout. I heard a great story on, I forget which podcast, about the importance of analytics and data from a woman who'd been working with something like a rugby association website. And the owners of the website insisted that there were no female viewers of and they went and looked at the analytics and found out that the split was actually basically 50-50. And it's like, surprise, what you think about the people coming to your website may actually, not be true. And you need to have this information in order to make decisions about the content that you put up there.
That's great. Thanks, Sally. Jason, so we've covered Google Analytics. What are some of the other, you mentioned, it escaped me the tool that you said you didn't like. I haven't used that one myself, actually. Are there some others that you think will really help our owner get some basic information from this 500 list?
I don't even think I mentioned these two on the list. I seriously just wrote myself a note, and I was like, I got to go make it 502. But I have a couple that are my go-tos when I'm building a site, when I'm trying to understand customer behavior. First one is Hotjar. It's a great little tool for heat maps and recording. How people are moving across the pages. For some reason, I always end up building sites that are really heavily based in lead generation. So it's important for me to know how they interact with the page, really understanding that user experience and how they're journeying across the site. So that's a great tool. And again, it's free for, I think for the page views where it like records how they interact. It records up to 100, I think, for free. And you just go in. What I do is it pings me when it's full. I go in, view them, delete them, and then I'm back in business. So Hotjar is a really great tool, and there are other heat map tools out there. Traffic Truffle is a great one that I've started using recently. I think it's out of the UK, but it tells me when somebody has been on my site from a company So somebody who's got a company domain, it tells me when they've viewed my site, how long they viewed my site, and what pages they've been on. So that's kind of a great sales tool. And there's a bunch of those out there, but Traffic Truffle, again, is one of the free ones. I always like to start with free stuff just because, I don't want to go ahead and commit to something, especially for a customer, if they're not going to find value in it. So I kind of sell them on the free. Here, this is what it can do. These are the kind of insights you can gain for nothing. And then they're like, okay, I'll buy it. So those are kind of my two other go-tos, Hotjar and Traffic Truffle.
Right. And so you get the site up and you're starting to get, how do you target your traffic, who you're trying to appeal for your content, Jason? Is that the next step? Getting them like to where I want them to go, or explain what you mean. Yeah. I need to do that, don't I?
I would think that who you want to have there is part of your definition of your business identity, where you need to start. Yeah. And then you're using the analytics to find out, are you in fact appealing to those people?
Right. Exactly. But you got to have some strategy about how you're going to get to that goal. So how, you're starting with a company that's at A and they want to get to B. So there has to be a methodology about the content that you're going to produce. Yeah. After you've done the heat map and about how that content is doing and how you do the research about the content, maybe you can give some insight about that.
Yeah, I believe it's leveraging that those tools and the insights that they can give to find, first off, quick wins. I think Sally, you mentioned they viewed that site and they found that it was a 50-50 split between men and women. And they previously thought that it was like 100% men or way skewed towards men.
That's what they believed. Women
to me, massive opportunity to go on and say, create a Facebook marketing campaign and target to women who meet those demographic settings that you see in Google Analytics. And so just finding these areas of opportunity where man, we get a lot of traffic on this page. Okay, well, let's change up the calls to action because maybe that page isn't converting. So, let's maybe change, move the call to action higher because they're not scrolling far enough. So get it in front of them so they can see it. So it's about gaining insights and these little quick wins that you can kind of turn it around and then increase traffic. And then, as I mentioned before, it's about finding these opportunities where you've just completely undervalued maybe a massive segment of potential business and then act on that. So you might change your marketing and your branding messages to focus more on women in their case. So massive insights, as I was saying before with Google Analytics specifically. I mean, you can spend all day going, oh, you know what? This page gets a lot of traffic and they always end up going back to the homepage. Well, why? And so I think it leads to a lot of internal company discussions and a lot of just thought into why are they doing it this way? And that allows you as a marketer and a designer and a web developer to kind of take those insights and retool and, make amazing things happen when you kind of take those insights and then shift your model.
I think that was great. So let's just quickly recap. So what I think you're saying is you use your heat map when you're developing the site, designing the site to see some of the assumptions that you're making are correct. And that's why using a free tool that we've discussed is a good idea, folks. Then obviously you've got your initial content, but then you need to get it up and then you set up your Google Analytics. And then after a few weeks, you start getting data about some of the assumptions you're making about how people are going to be, their journey through your website is going to be influenced by the content you're providing. And in some ways that when you start getting around what in marketing are called funnels, because basically I call it the velvet glove. You want content that gets more specific about specific products or services that you provide, and you want to see every page. You're normally going to lose so many people, but you do want to see a journey into a final outcome where you got an offer or you're asking something from the person that visit your website. Would you say that was a good I've done a good way of explaining some of the things there, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, and I just made it into this when you said assumptions, because everything about marketing, everything about building that new site or redesigning it, everything is a 100% total assumption until you add those tools and you test it and you see where that traffic is actually moving and coming from and going. It's all an assumption. And so you have to leverage those tools and those insights in order to make a better product and to, improve.
Right. So you're getting data for Google Analytics about where they're going. Are you getting a terrible bounce rate from the home page? Mm-hmm. That would give you insight that bounce, folks, is basically they're hitting the site and they're literally leaving almost straight away. Right. And that shows that your basic SEO or the basic look of the home page just isn't working. Right. So there could be a number of things that going on there, but it's a sign that things are not well. So that's a good reason to use Google Analytics, because you're probably going to have to look about how people are finding your site, and are you providing the right on-site SEO to attract the right people, right? So when it comes to your SEO research, Jason, are there some tools that you use for that?
I use Google's keyword planner tool, whatever it is. I use a lot of that. When I'm working specifically with WordPress, I always install Yoast, and I use that to understand, to give me insights into the copy. So like it uses the readability index, so it tells me if the content flows well. And it tells me, once I enter that keyword, the focus keyword for the page, it tells me, have I used it enough? Have I used it too much? It's a really great tool for getting a really comprehensive look on the page once you start writing. Gosh, and I can look it up while we keep talking here. But there's another tool that I started using recently for keyword research. I think keywordtool.io is another one. It gives you super basic insight.
Well, the one I would recommend, folks, that's not too expensive. They've got a free version. You can try so many searches. Is the KW Finder. It's the basic tool that I use initially when I'm doing some research. And Brian Jackson put it on, another panelist member put me onto it, and it's a tool that I use regularly now. If you want to go a bit up, but it's a big jump in price, folks, I do admit it. But it gives you an enormous amount of data about your competition. Is SEM Rush, but it's not a cheap tool. I do have it monthly, but it's not. I bought the year. I sucked it up. I got a good coupon code deal on it. Another tool that really helps you look at the broader picture. They've got a free plugin for Chrome and for Firefox, folks, but also you can use their website to a certain degree for free before you have to pay. But if you go on the pay version, it's expensive. It's SimilarWeb. It's a really nice product that gives you really good statistics and insight about your competition, where they're getting their traffic. Because the reason why I mention this, folks, is it's a really good idea to look at your competitors' websites that are above you, that are punching higher than you, not too high, because it's going to take too much money and time to get there. But make a judgment call, somebody that's doing a bit better than you, and see where they're getting their traffic, what is drawing the traffic in, and then make some strategy how you're going to do better based on Brian Dean's, you mentioned it, didn't you? The skyscraper, that some of the content that your competition is producing, you're just going to have to produce some better content. What do you think of that, Jason? Do you think I'm right about that?
Absolutely, 100%. It's about looking to see what's out there in the space and making something better, right? Because that's the name of the game. You want to have the best content available. I just thought of two more. SE Cockpit, which is actually the recommended tool from Brian Dean for giving you keyword research, and WordStream. They have a bunch of free tools if you go to their site. They have a bunch of specific to keyword research, I think that helps you find niche finders and keyword groups and stuff like that. So tons of great tools out there, like you said, in the space to make better content, really.
And I think, folks, the reason why I brought this up is that there's a kind of linkage between your Google Analytics and your SEO research, because you do your SEO research, folks. You make some assumptions, you produce some articles, and you don't have to do any of this, folks, but what will happen is that I've learned the hard way that if you don't do this stuff, you put a lot of time in articles and they just do not get the results that you are hoping for. So basically, if you do some basic SEO research and some research on your competition, then you sort out your kind of funnel, your flow in your website, and make a parent and sub pages, and then you put your content. You're going to be treated a lot better by Google than if you don't do anything like this. What do you reckon, Sally? Do you think is there some of the things you talk to clients about?
Sometimes, depending on how much SEO they're interested in, and how much follow up, and whether they've got somebody else who's mostly doing that. I have found that one thing that that gives me information about who's reading my content is comments. And so, I can be pretty sure that every time I post a tutorial about anything having to do with the events calendar, I will get readership in comments. And that's partly because the people over at Modern Tribe will plug my article. Right. So I have a nice, source of material coming in. But it's a thing people are looking for, and I didn't set out really to specialize in that. But because I was working with it, I write the tutorials mostly so I can remember how I did something, and they happen to also be useful to other people. And then people ask questions, and then I know that there are people interested in in some kind of follow-up connection, and getting the time to create the content, and all of that is pretty challenging. But don't neglect the actual, feedback you have from the people who are individually using your site. It won't give you as much of the big picture as the statistics, but it gives you some concrete things. Well, I know if X person asked for this and I publish it, that person will read it and will probably send other people to it and probably comment on it. And, and the fact that I've written all these tutorials, there are lots of do-it-yourselfer types responding to them, but there are also people who are like, oh, can I hire you to fix this? I'm having trouble here. So, even though in a way the article is written for other developers, it's also been helpful with prospective clients.
Kim, just to finish off, are there some, because you've been involved in marketing your own services and products, have there been any things that you've done that has really boosted the traffic that surprised you, that was a learning exercise?
I wouldn't say they surprised me. Now, I love the skyscraper, and we broke that down on one of my podcasts when I had a podcast, my own podcast. But for me, it wasn't a surprise, but it's just, I think because I came to market before we all had internet. You know, I'm business pre-internet. So a lot of what brings me traffic and engagement is when I do things like podcasts or go out and speak at conferences or go to, you know, live events. I would say live events bring me a lot of my traffic. And when I go to a live event and then write a blog post about it, that's actually where I end up a lot of times getting the most comments.
That's great.
And I tie into those just like you do, Sally. It's that one-on-one interaction works well for me.
And that's a great point, Kim, because, you know, we can be totally focused about what we're doing online, but it's integrating it with our real-world outreach through WordCamps, presentations, meetups, all the other face-to-face. It all has to be congealed into a strategy, and that's not easy, folks, but we could continue, and we're going to have Jason back because we've opened the can of really, and I'm passionate about marketing because without effective marketing, you're probably not going to have much success online. So I'm going to let the panel tell you how you can learn more about them and get hold of them. And we're going to start off with Jason. How can people learn more about you and get hold of you, Jason?
You can find me on Twitter at Jason Marlowe, Marlowe. Don't forget the E because you'll probably be talking to somebody else. And you can listen to me on my podcast where we talk about marketing, design, and websites. It's called LuchBreak Marketing. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review.
Oh yeah, to go there, folks. Great conversations there. I've been listening to their podcast, and you learn a lot. And thanks. Sally, how can people get hold of you?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com, and you can find the meetup at EastBayWP.com. And if you live in the Bay Area, you are encouraged to come along. And I'm at Sally Getch on Twitter and most other places. If you can spell my name, you can find me.
And Kim, how can people find more about you, my dear?
You can find me on Twitter at Kim Shivler. You can find my website, kimshivler.com. And from there, it links to specific sites like White Glove Web Training for Basics or how to build an online course for online courses.
And you can get hold of me, folks, quite easily on Twitter at Jonathan Denwood, or you can email me at jonathan@wp-tonic.com. I do read my email, even though there's a lot of it. And if you've got a personal question or suggestion for the show, that's great. I really would appreciate that kind of feedback. If you could go to iTunes, I know we mention it regularly, but it does really help the show, folks. You need, unfortunately, if you're on a PC, you're going to need iTunes. Sorry. And then you click you do a search for WP-Tonic, and then you click another button, and then you can give a review and give, any kind of feedback is much appreciated. Also, remember, we're mad. We produce 2 shows a week, the interview and our round table, which you're listening now. You can watch that live on our Facebook page, or we have a link on the bottom of our website where you can see all our future episodes, and you can join us on the show live, and you can be part of the chat room. So we offer loads of opportunities for you to be part of the WordPress WP-Tonic tribe. So I think it's been a great show. I really enjoyed it, and we'll see you next Friday for another roundtable at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.